everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 613. Today I'm going to talk about Tokyo Highway. Now this is a very different, interesting kind of dexterity slash spatial abstract game. Now the box you get here, you can only get right now, as far as I know, on the Board Game Geek store. Has been available other places, but as far as I can tell, this is the only spot you can get it right now. Now there's also a expansion that will bump this up from a 2-player game up to a 3- and 4-player game. I don't think that's available anywhere, but this seems to be relatively available on the Board Game Geek store. This is a very different game. I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a spoiler. It can be very frustrating, and some folks that I've talked to that have played this game were glad that they played it once and never would play it again. I'm not one of those people, spoiler. But let me show you how it works, and just be warned, it can be frustrating, but I have gotten better at it myself to where the point that the frustration is not so much. So let's take a look at this. It's very different, very odd, and I'll come back and kind of give you more of my thoughts on it. Okay, so I've got the game set up here for 2 players. You can see I've got the box lids kind of set up as ways for players to store their construction materials. Now each player has a different group of cars, and they each have kind of their starting highway. You can see you've got one of these planks and then one of these little posts here that you start with, and then one of their cars on each of those. And these need to be a plank's length apart, and then you're going to start building your highway off of that. Each player also has one of these little tweezers, which do come in handy. It took take me a little bit to use these. I get a little bit shaky, and I got kind of like a little bit of a meat hook type of hand there. So yeah, so you get these materials. You also get these 3 intersections, these special junction posts as well. You're limited to these 3, and you are also limited to the amount of construction materials that you have. Now what you're trying to do is get rid of all of your cars and be the first one to do that, or not be the first one to run out of the construction materials that you have here. And the way that you lose those is you actually end up giving those to your opponent if you knock anything down as you're building. So what are you going to do? Well, the first thing that you can do, let's say blue's going first. They then have to go up or down by 1. So we're going to go, in this case, up, of course, to start. And randomly, I'm just going to put that there. And we're going to put that, we have to be exactly like this long. And you need to have these resting in such a way that they're sort of flush with that. This is kind of tricky to do on video like that. So I've got that going. Now I'm not going to put a car out. The way that you put a car out is, let's see if I can do that with pink here. Probably. I don't know if I can do it without knocking anything over though. Oh no, I can't do that. I'm being dumb. I'd have to go here like that. Can I do that? No, not quite. That's, yeah. So this is really hard to do with the video there. So okay, so there you can see we went over that little thing there. So once you go over and you're the topmost plank there, so I'm just going to use the tweezers to show you that. We'll put that on here. This is very hard because I'm not trying to be boring. Oops. In that case, so that wouldn't count, in my opinion, as knocking something over. But if I knock something over of my opponent's highway, because you can see this is now their highway, and this is mine. If you knock one of those over, then you have to give them some of your pieces. And if you run out of these, then you lose. You're out of the game. But since I went above that, then I now get to lose one of my cars. Now it's blue's turn. Now blue, if he wants, just kind of doing this randomly, they can go under. If you are the bottommost, this is a little trickier. Let's see if I can do it without knocking anything over. Well, first let's measure it like that. And putting these cars actually is a way that you can kind of block and make it more difficult to do, because this makes it a little trickier to work around. So we're going to kind of stay away from that car because we don't want to knock it over. All right, like that, and we'll stick it under. Oh my gosh, totally knocking stuff over. No, not good. All right, so there I would have to give my opponent stuff. That was dumb. I'm just trying to show an example. And put these back. And this is one of the things that's frustrating, is once you kind of get going here and then you knock a bunch of stuff over, then it's hard to put it all back. So you can get to the point where one player's like, I concede, all that stuff. But that's not been my experience. It just gets frustrating. So we won't do this. But you get the idea. If I could come under here and be the lowest one, then I could also put one of my cards out. The last way that you can put cards out is if you sort of safely offload it. Let's say, we wanted to come out of one of these that was like just 1 high and go back down into the ground. This will usually be like the last card that you put out. you'll build like a big network of these, and then from some point in your network, you go to the ground, and then you can also put a car out if this goes safely and sort of acts as like an off-ramp as well. Now the other thing to keep in mind is, let's say the pink player was going out here and then they went back over this highway. Because there's already a highway over this one, you don't get to add a second pink car. So it makes you kind of grow it out, you know, and it becomes real kind of a spider network of roads there. But you can't kind of go over the same road twice to get multiple cars out. And then the last thing to talk about here are these pillars. And the way that those work, let's say, well, it's the blue player's turn. Let's say they wanted to come back across. You can then bump up your pillar here by as many as you need. You need at least, whoops, one other, whoops, I got a little carried away there. You need at least one other pillar underneath. You can't have this by itself. You got to have at least one there. But if I wanted to jump up like really tall here for some reason, let's say, and do that there, and then I could stick this fella right here like that. You don't want to do too steep. See, but it's really hard to do this during video, so I apologize for that. But you can kind of jump up. And the other thing you can do out of here is all of these points here, you can only have one sort of exit, but anything with these yellows here, you can have a split or a fork. And that's a very important kind of strategic technique there. I will put up some pictures of one of the games I played where we got done with this, because I don't want to sit here and spend like the next hour trying to build this up by myself. But that's kind of the gist of the gameplay. Again, you're trying to lose all your cars and then knock your opponent's pieces over, or else you got to give them, you know, construction materials there, and then you can kind of reset it up. But again, once you get really set up, if you knock stuff down, it might be several minutes there to kind of put everything back. And at that point, you might be like, okay, I concede. And you know, I think that's a satisfactory victory. Just, you know, you knocked it over. You can also use these tweezers here to pick these up if they kind of get dropped down as well. But that's kind of the basics of how you play this. Okay, so that is Tokyo Highway. I really enjoy this game. I've played it twice now, and the first time, about halfway through, I wanted to throw it in the trash. And I think my opponent, Mr. Eric from Push Your Luck Podcast, I think he also did. I'm not sure his exact feelings on it, but he was sort of lukewarm on it, and I was frankly too. But once you kind of can calm yourself and sort of enter like a meditative state, which not everybody is really keen on doing, and you know, board gamers usually. Not usually, I don't know. Some board gamers like dexterity and some don't. Let's just put it that way. This one is dexterity, but it's also like very like patient. It's not like flicking something or whatever. It's a quiet dexterity. But it also has those spatial elements where you're looking at getting kind of on top or underneath your opponent's highways and doing it in such a way that they can't easily come back over top or under you. So the way that you can kind of do it is you sort of play cat and mouse and sort of kind of stare each other off, sort of as a showdown. And so you kind of go away and then come back and go in, and then once you get down to the last few cars, you might try to like scurry off to the side and then bury it down and then kind of lose your last car as you go into like an off ramp. Meanwhile, you're trying to not knock anything over, and like I said in the walkthrough, you know, as the game goes along and you're each down to like 2 cars and you knock something over and it's like, oh no, I knocked like a lot of stuff over. So I have to pick all this back up, and I'm like, I concede. You win. Which is fine. I think that's okay. I mean, it's kind of like playing Jenga or something where you're like, yeah, okay, you knocked everything over, I win. Okay. That's a fair thing. So it's kind of like Jenga with spatial measurement kind of things. That makes me like feel like I'm playing Warhammer or something where I'm like, if I get this far, I can go here. And then, you know, I can flank him from this side. So it's got this weird vibe to it. The components are nice. It would be nuts, I think, to play this with 4 players, although I really want to try it. But I mean, that's just so much stuff. You got to get the expansion, which doesn't exist, but that would be really cool. So once you get it all set up, I showed you some pictures right before the review part here. It looks really cool. You know, you just kind of feel sort of proud together, you know, when you finish it, if you do finish it. Of what you've kind of both built, even though one player won and the other didn't. So that's kind of a neat thing. And then it's fun to really destroy everything too and throw it all back in the box. So it's a very unique kind of different experience. I'm totally going to be keeping this one, at least for a little while, until maybe I frustrate everybody that I try it with. But it's fun. It's just a different game. I don't really have anything like this. I haven't really played anything like this where it's kind of an abstract puzzle type of game, spatial abstract thing like checkers or something. And then it's got this weird dexterity element. So it's really interesting, different concept. But it can certainly be frustrating. And it's certainly, you can get better at it, and you can practice and get more steady, and you can kind of know, okay, that is dumb. I should not attempt this because I know myself and what I'm going to knock over. And so you can kind of learn that and get better at it. So it's really fun, but just kind of be warned, you got to give it a little bit of patience before you get into it. So that's Tokyo Highway. Thanks.